what would you do if they kind of like nerf 3-gen setups?
I think I'd try and hold 4 gens. If that failed, I'd probably stop playing DbD.
By stalling matches out for 60 minutes, the server kills all the survivors and the killer is granted a win. Oftentimes, this playstyle is labeled as holding survivors hostage and has quickly earned the reputation of being one of the most hated killer playstyles in all of Dead by Daylight. With that being said, I reached out to somebody who does this religiously to find out why he does this. This is B times 8, and being one of the top 8 Singularity players in the world, with hundreds of comments of hate against his favorite playstyle, I first asked him why he likes 3-gen holds. Why exactly do you like doing like 3-gen setups?
The reason why I like 3-gen setups is because every decision you make has a huge impact on the match. Like, for example, from the very start, you have to pick what gens you want to hold. And it's more important than just how close they are in Singularity, because some gens are safer than others. And even down to every single hit you commit to, you have to think about, does the team have the MPs? Like, can I commit to this? Will I be able to get on gens once I do this hit? And there's a very small margin for error, because if you make a mistake, there's no other gen to fall back on. Because once you make one mistake, the game is over. So that's the main reason why I enjoy it so much.
Sounds like there's like, in comparison to normal DbD, there's a bit more complexity. In comparison, just like, oh, chase down, and then just control the gens. This one, it seems like you're explaining in a way like, it's kind of like back when CM9 said, it's kind of like chess a little bit. Is that like the complexity adds a little more depth to DbD? So like, is that generally like what makes it like fun for you? Like in comparison to like the other playstyle, it's just like there's just more stuff to do. There's more stuff going on, I guess.
Yeah, whenever you're 3-genning, it's all about the decisions you make. You don't win by like one good decision, like one good play. You win by making good plays over 15 minutes. You have to play consistently good to win against good teams. Because when you play against decent teams, they'll be on gens constantly. So you have to play around that.
Well, like it sounds like you're like, if I make a mistake, if I fuck up, then like I lose, or like something else goes wrong. It's like it almost sounds like a competitive. Do you play like competitive or something?
With this? I don't.
No, I see. But it's just mainly like, oh, I saw that CM9 was doing this. It looks like it's a lot of fun. I'm going to try it, like give it a go, I guess.
No, I was playing Singularity before he did. I helped him a lot. When he was picking it up, I told him a lot about the best add-ons to use and all that.
In correlation to that, the roadmap, based off like the survivors saying like they don't like this playstyle, they don't think it's fun, behaviors made on the roadmap for like January to March that they're going to find a quote-unquote solution for 3-gen holds. What do you think of like the developers' decisions to get rid of the playstyle? Like what exactly do you think about that?
I think it's incredibly unfair that how I play is seen as problematic because of how much it contrasts with the average match of DbD. I think a lot of the hate comes from people not knowing how to play against it, because for things like, just an example, Tombstone Myers, there is counterplay to it. Like it's well known nowadays that lockers make it a lot harder for the Myers to play.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me back in the day when Zubat used to do something called like slugging. You just kind of like leave people on the ground. You're like, oh, how do we counter this? He just plays hillbilly. He instantly downs people. People will just need to be like, oh, they're just gotta learn to like pick people up. I think, in comparison, is there anything that like the survivors can do together to try to like break the setup that you try?
What you have to do is, on the survivor side, is you have to be incredibly efficient to make sure that you're pushing the gens faster than they regress. And I do sympathize with solo queue teams, because that's obviously a lot harder. And I think the best solution for the casual player base is to add a surrender vote after 10 minutes, because that solves the problems for both sides, because nobody enjoys a 1 hour game on both sides. So if a surrender vote happens after 10 minutes, if the survivors don't feel like it, if they feel hopeless, they can enter the game, and that saves everyone's time.
This is peculiar because the current game mode is favors a lot of like it's just random. So there's like a lot of solo queue. Do you think like a ranked game mode would actually solve like the type of outcries? Like if there was a ranked game mode, this be like a something that you do like, oh yeah, just that would solve this issue?
They changed how the MMR works very recently,
Hmm.
and ever since that happened, my games have been so much better. I think if they continue doing that kind of thing of having good players play against good players, I think that just benefits the game so much.
Have you seen a difference in attitude like towards the players that you're facing since it's quote unquote better?
Yes, I've lost a lot. I've lost a lot more since year mark
Hmm.
because if I make a mistake, I'm more likely to be playing against a team in comms, and I get punished so much more often now than I used to.
Hmm. I see. That's kind of interesting. We're kind of like on this trajectory. This is kind of like locked into the developer roadmap. It's for January and March. They like solution for 3 gen holds. So this, if like let's say they did something to get rid of the playstyle, or if like Singularity was nerfed, like how would this impact how you would play the game mainly?
Well, if Singularity gets nerfed, I'm just gonna realistically move to just playing a boring S tier killer, like most realistically, because I enjoy Singularity because of how varied his playstyles are, and I could play him in this way and get value out of a lower tier killer. If they nerf Singularity, then I'll just move to playing a boring killer that no one wants to play against. And if they remove 3 genning, I'm realistically gonna hold 4 generators instead. It's not that big of a change.
That's actually something that I find interesting because you can actually I know what you're talking about. With people I've seen people in comp, they just hold a 4 gen on like Dead Dog Saloon in the corner of the map. Uh, this if behavior wants to do something about this, they're likely going to have to do like a huge gameplay change to kind of like make sure that quote unquote isn't an issue anymore though. Like you said that they have like add like a surrender option. Back in the day, an old BHVR developer said that we're not going to add like a surrender option because that sounds like some sort of competitive BS nonsense.
Added a concede match feature.
This is competitive brain nonsense.
This was something I think like 2 years ago McLean said on his stream. If they couldn't add something that was like that, do you have any like something different that the devs could do?
I think, in my opinion, that they've done more than enough because playing 3 gen used to be the game's meta. You used to have old Call of Brine, old Eruption, old Overcharge, and you could win the game without even thinking. And then after that, they added Skull Merchant, and Skull Merchant had a similar problem of you could win without making a single decision because all the info you needed was just fed to you constantly.
When it comes to this playstyle, what is the majority of like it hinge on? Is it the killer that you're playing, or is it the perks?
The main thing is, it's the main thing. It's a killer. It's the killer. If you play a killer that can't pressure generators, then it's never going to work. Like you're never going to hold a 3 gen as Trapper because you can't go to each gen to pressure them at all. It's only something that I think realistically will beat decent teams if you're playing a high mobility killer or someone like Singularity who specializes in gen defense.
Like in the world where Singularity like gets nerfed, is there any other killers that could do the same exact thing? In honesty,
Plague, Plague works. Skull Merchant still works. Blight and Nurse have always been the strongest 3 geners. Even when Skull Merchant was a thing, Blight and Nurse was still stronger.
I think a lot of the issue stems from like survivors saying, "Oh, he's holding me hostage," or "This is boring." It becomes like a clash. Someone suggested in my Discord that a good solution would be quote unquote just lower the match time to like 20 minutes or something. But I'm not so sure about that's kind of like solutions like that because in retrospect, it becomes more of like a win condition where people can orient builds to just kind of using that sort of play style. Do you see holding the game until the servers close as a win condition for you when you play?
Well, in my eyes, the killer's job is to prevent the exit gates from being opened. And if you defend the gens gen defense is a part of the game, it always has been. And even behavior acknowledges that if the match reaches 1 hour, that's a killer win, because they give you the sacrificed blood points. It's not the match ending, it's the killer killing all 4 survivors.
So do you consider this to be breaking the game in a way? Or do you just see this as like, this is what the killer is designed to do?
No, I just think it's just a strategic choice that the killer can make.
Going back to 3-gen holds, there's the 2 strategies where at the beginning of the match, a player can choose their 3 gens and then just hold them down, and 1 minute in. But sometimes the survivors 3-gen themselves. So there are 2 different ways that this sort of situation happens. The killer forces it, and the survivors get pushed into it. I wonder what you think of differences between the 2. Do you think that these 2 should be treated differently when it comes to like the developers' decisions?
Well, the way I see it is, if you hold 3 generators from the start of the match, you're giving up all of your early game pressure. You're trading off your early game aggression to control how the match goes. I think that is fine, in my opinion. And the main issue with a 3-gen ending up at the end is teams not aware of it. But I think that they've solved that with, I think they could add some form of deja vu effect base kit of letting survivors know the most important area of pressure. I think that holding something that important to teams behind a perk is not good game design.
There's those 2 playstyles. How do you play like killer mainly when it comes to choosing what to do when you go into the match?
How I play DbD is I pick my 3 gens at the start of every match.
I wonder, like, the normal game, I'd imagine you mentioned like it's kind of like boring for you, just playing normally. I wonder if this is like a root of like a deeper issue where there needs to be like a variety for the game. When it comes to like the game in general, what is something that like you'd want the developers to add to the game that couldn't likely like not be in correlation to this 3-gen stuff at all, or it could be if you'd like?
I do think that if I could get behavior to add a single thing to the game, it would 100% be a surrender vote. Because the issue is survivors feel like they cannot win, and so then they don't try, and then everybody's bored in that situation because the gens aren't being pressured, so the killer has nothing to do, and then survivors aren't doing anything, and so they think that they're being killed in a game. And if they had the option to end the game, I think that would just help everybody so much.
But what happens in the scenario where if people just surrender games where they just like, they kind of like don't like the killer or they don't like a map? Like, how would you kind of like make an option like that so that people just don't surrender just for like anything, I guess?
I think the most important thing would have the surrender vote only being available 10 minutes into the game, because then that would only affect the games that become. So it only really addresses stalemates in that situation.
Do you play DbD more casually, or like or do you see DbD more as a casual game that you play, or like a game that's more competitive?
I think it's a game that I play it casually. I don't compete in tournaments. But I do compete with myself to try and improve the way I play and iron out mistakes in my play styles.
Part of the main issue is getting people to kind of like accept this style. And I know when you came in and there was like someone else that came into the Discord after I posted the video, there were like 10, 20 people being like kind of like trolling you. They were trying to like invite you to like get into like the voice chat. they would have probably like they would have probably
Yeah.
tried to like bite
I
your head
wasn't.
off.
No.
But I was like, people have this mindset where they're not very open to it.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that when most people think about free-genning, the only thing they can think of is Odstava's video on the Torment Creek game between CM9 and Team Eternal.
Mhm.
That is all that most people know about free-genning. I think that is a real shame, because in that match, he got the best possible free-gen. I've never seen that spawn in Torment Creek before. And then people think, oh, people think that the match lasted 55 minutes. People seem to ignore the fact that the gens went from 0 to 100 in 15 minutes. And that's something people ignore. People think that beating a free gen takes an hour. And that's a misconception I think is very dangerous. I think people should really know that if both sides properly play the game will only last 15 minutes. Either the gens will get done in 15 minutes, or all the survivors are dead in 15 minutes.
Are you saying that like survivors are like not experienced enough when it comes to this?
At the end of the day, going against someone who holds a free gen from the start is a very rare play style. You can look at the old pick rates for Skull Merchant. Old Skull Merchant was the 4th least picked killer. And then if you go and look on Nightlight, which has what stats, Eruption and Singularity is a rare pick. So free genning on Singularity even is something that rarely happens. So what happens is they only play against it once. And then they think, oh, I lost this. There's no way to play against this. Because they play against it so little, they just villainize it. And I think that's the biggest problem.
So it sounds like people are kind of like hyper-focusing on like the less than 1% of games they ever get. And
yes,
it's kind of making a mountain out of a molehill where it's just, there's only 10 people that do it. And it's not really an issue because there's only 10 people, like out of like 50,000, I assume. I think a lot of the main issue comes with is when like content creators kind of cover it. And then there's this mentality in the DbD community where they're like, this is sort of like optimization to the game, where people want to do the best play style. They want to run the best perks. They want to win like every single match. I imagine when Odstava posted the CM9 game, then all of a sudden it cropped up that there were a bunch of like more Skull Merchants kind of doing the play style, and that kind of like community grew. Is there any way to make sure that it doesn't kind of like just take over the entire community in a world where behavior kind of lets this 3-gen meta strategy happen?
I think it's important to note that it's not the strongest playstyle. It's something, if people do it, they do it almost always. Some people just do it to annoy people, obviously. But the majority of people do it for their own enjoyment. And if you look at other Singularity players, there's one guy on a 200 win streak. My highest is 39. Like, it's not something I do to win games, or anyone does to go on massive win streaks anymore, at least.
When you mentioned like 3-gen is not the strongest playstyle, I think that's like the common misconception. So in correlation to the strongest playstyle, like what exactly is the strongest playstyle for you in the game?
Well, I found the most success for me personally playing very territorially, but I think if you want to learn what the strongest playstyle is, just look at how comp players play. In tournaments, they don't just defend free gens from the start, and I think that really should make it obvious to people that it's not the strongest way to play the game. Because I think they did whenever old Call of Brine was a thing, but ever since then, like I still run them because they are the most useful perks for me, but you can't, what is this? It's just not what it used to be. It's not the strongest way to play, basically.
I see. I've been noticing like there's the trend. There's like complaints about your playstyle. It's like, okay, we nerf Eruption, we're going to nerf Call of Brine, we're going to nerf Overcharge, we're going to nerf like Sadako even. And then he's like, we're going to make her more chase oriented. We're going to nerf Skull Merchant. We're going to make her more chase oriented, even though she still can do it. And what it seems like is instead of changing the gameplay mechanics, they're just touching like every single killer that can do this setup. do you think this is like the correct way to go about things, where it's like we don't want to touch the gameplay mechanics, we're just going to like rework and change like 10, 20, 15 killers?
I think all of the changes so far they've made to free genning have been incredibly healthy. For example, all of the old gen kick perks were far too oppressive and they could make even Trapper a good free gen defender. Skull Merchant was the worst. It was incredibly problematic because the issue was you could have the free gen potential of Blight, but you would both zero mechanical skill and zero actual game sense. You would never have to track rotations of survivors because anytime, even before they tapped a gen, you would know.
I see. At the end of the day, what would you tell behavior if you could talk to them right now based on like everything they put out and how they think about things? If you could talk to the community and like say something to the community based on like what you do, what would you tell the devs, and then what would you exactly tell the community if you could say something to them?
If I could talk to the devs, I would tell them that they should be focusing their attention on things that affect the majority of matches. For example, per map design. Swamp, for example, is a map that if they change Swamp, that would help 20%, not 20%, like 5% of matches would get exponentially better if they change Swamp. If they change, for example, if they nerf free genning, that's 0.1% of matches are more fun for the average person. I think they should focus their resources on what will help the most people. And if I could speak to the community, I would say I think the biggest thing is that behind everyone who plays a certain way, there's a real person behind the screen. And I think that it would just be so nice if people could play the game how they wanted without being villainized. Because I think that's a big problem right now.
I feel like this type of topic is very difficult.
Oh yeah, it is.
Because everyone's like it's very repulsive. It's like for most people. I have this friend and they like playing and they play exactly like how you do. And when I asked you the question of like what would you do if they kind of like nerf 3-gen setups, they said I'll just stop playing DbD. That's what my other friend said.
I think I would try and hold 4 gens, and if that fails, because at the end of the day, if you hold 4 gens, the survivors they still have the same amount of EMPs. So I don't think it would be that problematic. If that failed, I'd probably stop playing DbD, to be honest.
But when people play in like solo against a 3-gen, they're like, oh, there's nothing I can do. So I guess this is why you have this like why you want to add the surrender option. To be like, yeah, there are some, I guess, in a way, you're kind of like saying in this scenario where it's 4 solo queues, it is a little bit unfair to them in a way, right?
Yes. The thing is, I sympathize a lot with solo queue players. I don't enjoy playing versus them. But if you change the balance of a game in the way that favors solo queue teams, that will exponentially make it easier for full teams to beat me. I do think that's a mistake.
Back in the day, they nerfed camping, and now they nerfed tunneling, the unhook stuff, and then they nerf slugging because of the unbreakable boon exponential stuff. And now they're nerfing 3-gen setups. I wonder if it kind of will ever get to the point where it's like we just nerfed everything that Killer is good at and Killer's unplayable. Whenever like the majority kind of complains or doesn't like something, it kind of always like shifts. This is just one of the dominoes that fall that leads to should they be doing this, should they not? And yeah, it's interesting.
I think if you look at the game in the eyes of it just being a 1v1 simulator, I do see how people would find all them things so annoying. But I think if they remove everything from the game apart from just 1v1 after 1v1, I think that will make the game a lot less interesting over time.
So do you think the devs should focus on just look at the game like it's a 1v1 simulator in a way? Wouldn't that be pushing the game more towards chase though?
No, I think that it's difficult. It's very difficult. But I think that what I'm trying to say is I think it's very important for there to be a variety in playstyles.
Okay. Different playstyles just to be viable, and 3-genning being, I guess, one of them, right?
Yes, it's a viable strategy, but it's not the strongest.
I see. Thanks for the opportunity to interview you, and yeah.
Alright. Yeah, it means a lot. Thank you.
Hi. Right. Appreciate it, fam.
Alright, see ya.